going on, everyone? My name is Donovan, and today we're going to take a look at a pair of AirPod clones from our friends over at Nokis.com. These are the KP Pros, and they're available right now on their website for $100, so significantly cheaper than the actual AirPod Pros. So the actual AirPod Pros come in at $249. So definitely going to save you a lot of money if you want to get the clones, and you'll have all the swag that you get with the clones because most people won't be able to notice the difference between the two. However, don't go and try to sell these to someone telling them that they're actual AirPod Pros. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the differences other than the price, and talk about whether these things are worth the purchase. All right, so first things first, they are definitely a very, very close one-to-one copy of the actual AirPod Pros. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the actual box. So you can see that on the box, they look very similar. In fact, they basically look identical. And then on the back of the box, again, same thing. Only difference here is they actually throw a couple stickers on here to basically cover up this information that you would normally see on the AirPods box. And then you can see they've covered up the sides there as well with a couple of Nokis stickers, just so they don't have I'm thinking some issues with Apple in terms of the actual copying of the box. And then the actual case, or the actual design of the AirPods themselves versus the KP Pros. So here is the case. You can see there's a slight difference here with the LED light. So when I open up the two, you can see I already have the right one out. You can see that they both have a green LED. It looks like actually these ones showed up first on my iPhone. So we'll go ahead and shut that and see if the actual AirPods show up here. So it should have a pop-up menu. And actually it comes a little bit slower here on the actual AirPod Pro. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut that, and let's see if this one comes up right away. Should come up. Yep, there it is. All right, so obviously it gives you the same pop-up menu you get on an iPhone. These will, of course, work with Android as well. And let's go ahead and try this one more time. So these are the actual AirPod Pros. I will show you in just a second, there is a slight difference in the actual design of the case. So let's go ahead and show that. So you can see here in the inside of the case up here, the top does look a little bit different. The bottom looks basically identical. The charging mechanism is slightly different, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Both are wirelessly charging compatible, and then they also use Lightning to charge up. On the back of the case, you can see that this one has the Apple information here, designed by Apple in California. This one does not have that. And then in terms of the actual button here, this one is more flush with the case, whereas this one you can see it is just slightly recessed, but a very close one-to-one copy there of the actual AirPods. Now I can actually hear one playing. I'm thinking it's this one over here. But now let's go ahead and take a look at the AirPod Pros next to a KP Pro, and there's just a couple of slight design differences that are worth mentioning here. So the first one being that the charging mechanism, you can see, is a little bit different. This one actually looks like an original AirPod when it comes to the charging mechanism, whereas this one obviously has its own design. Over here, the actual ear tip, by the way, these do come with 3 ear tips, just like you get with the AirPod Pros. They also come with the Lightning to Type-C cable, but you can see that the AirPod Pro ear tip is different. This one uses more standard ear tips, whereas the AirPod Pro uses something that is proprietary to an AirPod Pro. And the last design difference that's important to mention is this one has a physical button that you're going to actually push, and that's going to do some play pause. You can also use it to turn on your transparency mode and also your noise canceling mode. So that's going to be an actual physical button, whereas over here, it looks like it's a physical button just like that one, but this one has no give to it, and then it's touch sensitive. So there's actually a touchpad up here on the top, and it's touch sensitive versus having that squeeze. Now I definitely prefer the squeeze because it has less false touches with the squeeze, where here you get a couple of false touches on accident when you're trying to pull it out of your ear. But other than that, basically the exact same design. So in terms of design, they're a very good close one-to-one copy of the actual AirPod Pro. So now let's go ahead and talk about functionality. And they do mention some of the functionality here. Like I mentioned, here is the price. I should also mention here, they do have a Black Friday sale that's going to give you 20% off, and they often have sales. So definitely use some of the coupon codes they have available on their website. And here are some of the features that they mention. A couple things worth mentioning here in terms of the actual sound quality. I would actually say that the KP Pros are right on par with the AirPod Pros. One major difference being that these have a transparency mode and noise cancellation. And so if you want to be able to hear things coming in from the outside, you can hear them on the transparency mode, or you can block out things on the outside using noise cancellation. Not available here on the KP Pro. So those features are definitely not available. Basically, you're just getting standard headphones here. They do have some passive noise isolation because they do go into your ear, but you're not getting the actual noise isolation. But in terms of the actual sound quality, they say here improved lows, mids, and highs. And I would say that these are pretty much right on par with the AirPod Pros in terms of just the standard sound quality. And I'd give them a solid 4.5, maybe even a little bit better than that, 4.6 out of 5, whereas over here, I would give the AirPod Pros more like a 4.7, possibly even a 4.8 out of 5. So it's a very, very close, almost indistinguishable sound quality between the two. So that's definitely a huge thumbs up for the KP Pros to have sound quality at that price point and nearly match the AirPod Pros when it comes to that. Now, both do also have in-ear sensors, so when you pull these out, they are going to automatically pause the music, just like what you'd get with the AirPod Pros. You could already see that when you open up the case, you will get that pop-up menu just like you get with the AirPod Pros. So this is the case for the KP Pros. And you can see that obviously works. In terms of the microphone, you can see that's obviously different here because the microphone on this one is actually here at the bottom, just like what you'd get with a older pair of AirPods or even some other clones that looks just like that. And I would say in terms of the actual microphone, it's definitely, it says improved mic, and I would say it is improved over previous clones. So like clones of the previous AirPods, I would say it is an improvement, but it definitely is not as good as what you get on the AirPod Pros. It is hard to really match the kind of sound quality you get in phone calls and just the overall sound quality coming through the microphones with the AirPod Pros. So these would be I would say like a 4.5 out of 5 when it comes to sound quality on phone calls, whereas over here I'd give these a good 4 out of 5, so still acceptable, but they definitely don't give you the kind of noise isolation that you would get on phone calls as the AirPod Pros. All right, so other than that, other things to mention, battery life. So over here on the AirPod Pros, you're getting 4.5 to 5 hours, whereas over here on the KP Pros, you're getting about 3.5 to 4.5 hours. So depending on how you're using them, if you're using them primarily for phone calls, it's going to be a little bit less. But if you're using it primarily for music, you're going to get on that higher end. So it's not quite as good as what you're getting over here on the AirPod Pros. You also don't get as many charges out of the case. So over here on the AirPod Pros, you get about 4 extra charges out of the case, so about a total of 20 to 25 hours, whereas over here you're getting 3 to 4 extra charges, so not quite as much extra charges out of the case, and so you're looking about more like 15 to 20 hours, so still very acceptable, and honestly you're rarely going to ever burn through the entire battery, but just something worth mentioning, the battery life isn't quite as good on the AirPod Pros, or sorry, the KP Pros, as what you get on the AirPod Pros. But overall, I would definitely say that the KP Pros are a fantastic clone of the AirPod Pros. And if you're considering getting the AirPod Pros, but you just don't want to spend the money that you'd have to pay for a pair of AirPod Pros, because let's be honest, they are very expensive, definitely consider the KP Pros. They are a worthy clone of the AirPods. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope this video has been helpful for you. Any questions that you have, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.